The fishermen of Blackwater Bay had a saying, "If the fog rolls in thick, best keep your lines dry." But Tom wasn't one for old wives' tales. A stubborn, fearless angler, he prided himself on braving the elements. He'd fished Blackwater Bay at night countless times, and tonight was no different, or so he thought. It was past midnight when Tom's boat slipped through the cold, thick fog, deeper into the bay. The water was eerily still, almost like glass, reflecting the pale light of a waning moon. He cast his line and settled in, waiting for a tug. Minutes passed, then hours, but nothing. Not even a ripple. He was about to reel in and call it a night when he saw a shadow pass under his boat. It was long, too long to be any fish he knew of. Tom leaned over, squinting into the dark water, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Just as he was about to shrug it off, his line snapped tight. Finally, he thought. But the line didn't pull. It simply held taut, like he'd hooked something solid. He tried to reel it in, but it wouldn't budge. And then, the line began to spool out, slowly, like something on the other end was moving deeper. Then, from somewhere in the fog, he heard it, a soft, mournful song. It was distant at first, but it grew louder, echoing across the water. It sounded like a woman's voice, beautiful but haunting, singing in a language he didn't understand. Chills crept up his spine. He wanted to pull up anchor and leave, but his hands wouldn't move. The song wrapped around him like a spell, drawing him in, and then he saw her, just out in the mist, a woman's silhouette, floating on the water. Her face was hidden, but her long, wet hair draped down like a veil. Her arms stretched out toward him, beckoning. He blinked, and she was gone. But before he could make sense of it, his boat jolted as something struck it from below, hard enough to nearly tip him overboard. Heart pounding, he peered over the edge, and there she was again. Closer this time, her face just beneath the water, pale and ghostly, eyes staring wide and unblinking, fixed on him. "Leave," she whispered, though her lips didn't move. The voice echoed inside his head, low and guttural now. He staggered back and the boat rocked violently, as if something massive was circling below. Panic surged, and he tried to start the motor, but it sputtered and died. The fog thickened, pressing in until he could barely see his own hands. And then, he felt it, a cold, slimy hand wrapping around his ankle. He screamed, kicking wildly, but the grip only tightened, icy fingers digging into his skin, pulling him toward the water's edge. Desperate, he reached for his fishing knife and slashed at the hand, feeling it release just enough for him to stumble back. He looked down, expecting to see a severed hand, but there was nothing. Only dark water rippling as if disturbed by something just below. With shaking hands, he grabbed the oars, rowing furiously. But no matter how hard he rowed, he didn't seem to move. It was as if the bay itself held him captive. He heard her voice again, louder, clearer. "Stay with me." Suddenly, a bone-chilling thought gripped him. He remembered the stories of the phantom of Blackwater Bay, the drowned maiden who was said to lure fishermen to their deaths. They'd warned him, but he'd laughed it off. Now he wasn't laughing. Finally, through sheer force of will, he managed to break free of the strange pull, rowing until his arms burned. The fog began to lift, and he could see the faint outline of the shore ahead. But just as he thought he was safe, he looked over his shoulder, and she was there, sitting in his boat, her dead eyes fixed on him, her cold breath brushing against his neck. With a final blood-curdling scream, he leapt out of the boat, swimming to shore, half mad with terror. When he looked back, the boat was empty, drifting in the water, silent as the grave. Tom never returned to Blackwater Bay, but some say that on foggy nights, if you listen closely, you can hear the soft, mournful song of the phantom maiden, calling out for another soul to join her in the deep, dark water.